Okay, let's come on back. Thank you. You're like super well mannered, in addition to being enthusiastic. So, we're going to do some math together, and I want to make my purposes as clear as I can. I am not here to teach you a specific piece of math content, although the problem we're going to do has lots of math content in it. My goal is for you to experience these verbs, like what you just wrote. That's the purpose. It is not to get the answer. Answers matter in the math classroom. I'm not saying they don't. My purpose today is a process-based purpose. It's a mathematical, like standards for math practices kind of purpose, depending on what your standards are. I want you to experience math as it's actually practiced. So I'm going to make some specific facilitation moves to increase the likelihood that you will experience these verbs, and we'll unpack those at the end. Like, what did I do pedagogically? Not that it's going to be perfect, but it's intentional. You'll see as I facilitate this problem, I'm trying to increase the likelihood that every person in here has a satisfying experience with this problem, okay? So the first thing I need to do is to talk to you about the idea of rough draft math. That's what I want us to do. My friend Mandy Jansen she's in disclosure, she's writing a book for me I'm super excited about called Rough Draft Math because it comes out of her research with secondary students who are afraid to talk in math class because they think talking is performance. This happens when you become an adolescent too, right? Like, it's just natural childhood development. Kindergartners will tell you everything while they have their finger up their nose, right? Like, there's no self-consciousness about talk yet. But as kids grow and have experiences in school and go through normal adolescence, they become increasingly self-conscious and self-aware, and they talk less and less. To the point where if you ask secondary math teachers, what is your issue with teaching math? Like, by a mile, they say engagement. I can't get kids to engage. They just shut down, right? So rough draft math, Mandy has found to be an extremely powerful tag. She teaches the kids to say, I need to use rough draft talk right now. Or I need to write my rough draft thoughts right now in math. And that is liberating for kids, that you don't wait to talk until you have the answer that you're sure is right. You talk to make sense. You talk to learn. You don't work it out all silently and then say it in a perfect, polished paragraph. You fumble and you start and you stop and you change your mind and you get halfway into a sentence and then trail off and then you think, no, I don't think that's true, and then you it sounds bumpy, and that's how it should sound as people are talking to learn. So my goal here is going to be that we have some periods where you're working by yourself and then some periods where you're talking with one another for rough draft. We're going to stop and share out ideas a couple times. We're going to talk about different people's first steps. So it's going to be like some of it's going to be very internal and some of it's going to be more public. And so that brings up this question of norms. Because, and this is something I hope you think about with students and with teachers, whoever you work with, is what do we need to do for one another so that we feel safe fumbling around with some math, trying some new math for us publicly. That can feel like a risk. And it feels like a risk until you know it's safe to do it and it's normal to do it, and it becomes internalized of like, this is just what we do. This is how we make sense in math classes. We talk like this. So my question for you, and I want you to talk about it at your table groups, and then we'll come back together and I'll write some of these down, is what do you want to try to do for one another? Like, what does a good group mate do in math so that you feel comfortable? What do you want to promise to try to do for each other? And by the way, when you set norms, you should assume they're going to be broken. Like, this isn't, I'm not saying, if I say use think time or whatever, that doesn't mean it happens. That means like that's what we're working toward, okay? And then we'll talk about like, how do we do on that? What do we need to focus on, okay? So I'm asking you to aim for what would you like from your group mates that would make it so that you can work on this math problem? And what do you need from them? What do you want to say to them about like, here's what would help me is if you would do this for me while I'm working. So take a sec and then talk at your tables for a minute about what you need, and then we'll come together and we'll make a list of our norms. Would you mind as they share out? Because the videographer's.
Oh, he's good at that? Okay. Okay.
Okay, so Emily has a microphone. You see her right there? And so I'm going to be typing up here, and Emily's going to be like doing the Phil Donahue thing so that we can all hear you. But what we need is just somebody to get us started on this. Is just what's our first thought for a norm? Can somebody raise a hand, and Emily will find her way to you.
Listen. Listen and accept.
Can you say more about listen?
Listen to the ideals of others. Listen to what they have to say.
And accept what? What are we accepting?
Accept there's more than one way to solve a problem. So accept the way that it is solved, or accept the way that they come about solving the problem. We were talking with ourselves, but we also wanted to say this is what we do with our students in classrooms.
Is that fair? What's up there? I'm just typing as you talk, so. Okay, Emily in the.
Appreciate diversity of thought and approach.
Anyone want to add on or suggest something new?
This is hard work.
I should have told you to wear sneakers tonight.
Okay, so I always think that before I start some sort of activity like this, I want students to be able to think for themselves for a little while. So there has to be some silence at the beginning to give everybody a chance to think. And then they share out.
That is exactly how I'm going to facilitate it. I agree with you. When you don't have your bearings yet, you're still trying to make sense out of the problem, and somebody next to you starts talking. It's like, I don't even, do you know that disorienting feeling? That we each need a minute to, I'm actually going to impose 5 minutes of silence so that everyone gets a chance to play on their own, which gets to the second point of diversity of thought. Because if we start together, we're going to get fewer strategies on the table. And what's coming out, I picked a problem that's like my favorite problem in the whole wide world. It's so fun. And part of why it's so fun is there are at least half a dozen totally valid different approaches. And the conversation is extremely rich if those come out. But if you all try to march through it together, you're not going to get that. You're going to groupthink into one approach. So to get that diversity of thought, I'm going to let everyone get started on their own. But then you'll have your group and the rest of us to support you to try something new. Other thoughts?
Be willing to admit when you don't understand where the problem's going. So if someone's explaining something and you don't get it, be willing to draw attention to the fact that you don't understand it, and then learn from that and grasp it better.
And can you ask them some questions, or could you say that again more slowly, or I didn't follow that, or that kind of talk? I kind of led you into that. If you don't want me to type that, I can delete it. Okay. It wants a hyphen. Okay. So what happens if somebody at your group finishes before everybody else? Can we talk about that? When you're working and somebody, it's the equivalent of this is easy. I did this problem actually with a bunch of teachers, and there was a teacher who, when he figured it out, he had one of those clicky kind of pens. And he figured it out, and he went and dropped the pen like a microphone. And then, like, we had gone to a break, and some of the teachers, this, I have to talk about gender in this situation, because it was the one man at the table, and then it was women teachers, and so we were in the women's bathroom where all real conversations happen. And this woman said, "I gotta tell you, this totally shut me down." And, like, he didn't say a word, but this, like, "I'm out, I'm done." And she was still just getting started. She was still, like, figuring out, how might I start this problem? And so she stopped. So can we talk, like, what should he have done? And let me tell you, we talked about it in the large group. We came back, and I was like, "Monica, would you just say what you told me in the bathroom, and so we can address this, right?" And he was like, "Oh, God, I was just so happy." He wasn't trying to hurt anybody's feelings. He just felt so satisfied with what he'd figured out, but he wasn't being mindful of how that would be perceived by somebody sitting right next to him, right? So now that I've said that story, what's a norm that would help us in that moment? You had a thought up here, if you can sprint, Emily.
I didn't see the hand. Oh, Kari. Okay.
Sorry, I could have sprinted back to you. Just giving them the opportunity to think about it in a different way. So I always ask my students, you've come up with one solution, can you address it in a different way? Which would allow the other kids to finish their thinking.
So if he had finished it one way, instead of feeling done, he should have thought, "I wonder if there's a different way I could solve this problem." In this problem, I promise you there is. I promise you there are multiple ways that you haven't considered yet, new strategies. And I'm going to do something to try to get some of those on the table. What should she have done? Like, let's get to the real thing. Like, that might have, we're adults, and this is still hard for us, right? We expect kids to be great group members, but, like, what should he have done, and what should she have done in that moment?
I guess she could have turned to him and asked him, do you mind sharing how you got your answer?
I think she wasn't ready yet. She was still thinking, and somehow the way he handled it made her stop thinking about the problem altogether. She felt that awareness, So, I almost want her to state her needs and stand up for herself in that moment, which is a hard ask. That's a hard ask. We're not always rewarded for standing up for ourselves. Anywhere, tennis courts, math classrooms, right? But you know what I mean? We need to teach kids to advocate for themselves, to say, "It didn't help me when you capped the pen and dropped it like that. That was unhelpful to me. So in the future, here's what I'd like you to do. Could you just wait patiently and I'll catch up? And then I want to hear how you did it." You know what I mean? But, like, to have that conversation, to get it out in the open. Emily over here. The video guys need it.
I think it's also important that we empower students to accept where they are, and that I don't have to be where you are and finish when you finish, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And that's something I had to learn in college. Is like, okay, I'm the only person with my hand in the air, and there are butterflies running in my stomach, but it's okay that I need an answer that you already have. And they have to be able to accept that that's okay. That's a good thing, to be aware of the fact that you don't know something and you're still working it through. And just because somebody else is excited about being done, it shouldn't rain on your parade of still figuring it out.
Can we go back to this very first one about listening? There's a thought that I just want to pull out of this. Kids don't listen to understand somebody else's idea naturally. I actually don't think adults listen to try to understand somebody else's idea. We listen for our turn to talk. Like, that's what we do. We listen for the pause, and then I can say my thing, right? So part of listening is changing our goal. It's not about the answer getting. It's about genuinely being curious about how other people approach it. So this idea of empowering students to feel good about where they are, I want to tell you about my friend Christopher Danielson. He is one of my math heroes. He lives in Minneapolis. I was just there 2 weeks ago with my kids at Math on a Stick at the Minnesota State Fair, because you can get anything on a stick, right? So we have math on a stick. So Christopher is my favorite person to do math with in the whole wide world. He has a PhD in mathematics. I do not. He knows much more advanced math than I do. He was a middle school teacher. He was a college professor of mathematics. He's taught teachers how to teach math. He's a parent. So he thinks about math teaching from pre-K to beyond grad school. And yet he's my favorite person to do math with, and I never feel self-conscious. So I have been thinking a lot over the years about what it is that Christopher does that makes me so comfortable to fumble through something in front of someone who knows, he usually knows the answer way before I do, right? And it is that Christopher views it as his privilege to bear witness to my discovery. And this is the teacher's greatest gift. Like, this is honestly why we do what we do, as far as I'm concerned. Like, this is the luckiest thing, the thing we live for, is the moment when a child is figuring something out and we get to witness that. That is why we're there, right? So to stand by and celebrate and listen, it's not that I'm biting my tongue. It's not that I'm dying to tell them the answer. I, in fact, don't want to do that at all, because that's like unwrapping somebody else's birthday present. You know what I mean? Like, that moment, there's a lot of being stuck, and then they have the epiphany, and I never want to rob someone of that moment. So however people approach it, and here's the really neat thing about doing math with Christopher, is he learns math from me all the time, because I approach it in a different way than he does, because I don't know all that advanced stuff. So I sometimes will approach it visually, or I'll use a symmetry argument, and he's like, oh my God, you just helped me understand the formulas that I was taught. Like, I had never seen it the way you see it, because I see it like an elementary school teacher, right? So together, we learn more by listening to each other and thinking about what we each know and bring to the table and approach. But I also think that there's sometimes you see kids, they get the answer and they just want to tell everybody else what the answer was. It's 72. Did you get 72? Right? They like start to, and for the kid who's just about to figure it out, it's like, you know, it doesn't feel good, right? So there's something about not robbing people of their joy, of making sure that everyone gets to experience that joy, and having that be a goal for your class changes how groups interact. So I don't know how to say that. I use the words bear witness to other people's joy. Honestly, that's what I live for as a teacher, right? And I live for that as a teacher of adults and of children. It doesn't matter. It's just great joy. And my daughter, Daphne, she's 9. She said, you know what my favorite thing is when you see someone who's stuck and they're about to figure it out and they start making that funny face, right? And then, like, they get it, and it's awesome. And I said, yes, that's it. And so that, like, if you finish and somebody is still working, rather than being so focused on getting them to the answer, enjoy watching their discovery and their joy. Does this work for us? We got to get going on this problem, or we're not going to have enough time for you all to get to the joy. And so the thing is, in my facilitation today, I'm going to try to stretch out the thinking as much as I can. Don't you dare pass those out yet. We got to notice and wonder first. You just sit down. Just sit down. Because I'm actually going to make it impossible for you to do any answer getting, because I took the question off the problem. So you don't even know what you're trying to solve yet, okay? I'm going to put a picture up here, and we're going to do some noticing and wondering. Do you know this phrase, to notice and wonder? From Annie Fetter. She's awesome. I have a sticker on my computer. It says Notice and Wonder Woman. That's from Annie Fetter. She's the Notice and Wonder Woman. So I'm going to put a picture up there, and I'm going to ask you, what do you notice and what do you wonder? And you're going to notice and wonder. And so there is no one can solve anything, okay? The question is hidden from you for right now. So relax. Take a look at the picture. You're going to notice and wonder different things. You'll talk at your table. I'll write a few of them down. And then we'll start playing with the problem itself. Okay, so we're going to skip Phil. Okay, so there's a picture. Has anyone seen this problem before? Okay. All right, there are multiple ways, so you'll still have fun. So take this 45 seconds to look on your own without talking. And then talk at your table groups about what you notice and what you wonder. You can talk in pairs or as a large table. It's up to you. These are big tables, so you might break into smaller groups. But what are some things you notice and what are some things you're wondering right now? Do you mind continuing to do that?
I'd love to, Tracy. I'm just bad at seeing people put their hands up.
Okay, let's start to get some of these up here. You'll continue to notice and wonder, but it's going to start getting us some vocab. So what's something somebody noticed? Maybe from over here where Emily is, and then she'll work across.
Yes.
Or wondered.
There's no seals on the right, and there's no elephants on the right.
You can go to someone else whenever you're ready.
I wonder if this chart is comparing the weight of the animals.
We notice there's a line right down the middle separating the animals into what looks like two groups.
I notice there's 5 types of animals. I wonder if the animals to the right on each row are an equivalent representation to the animals on the left in each row.
I need that one more time.
I wonder if the animals on the right of each row are equivalent representations of the animals on the left in each row.
In each row, you're saying. Where are we? Row. So is a row going across? Because we had line, and line was the thing down the middle, and so then a row is going across. Should that be language? Okay. So say it one more time for me.
Okay. Are the animals on the right of each row an equivalent representation of the animals on the left of the same row?
I noticed that the top row is the only one that does not have polar bears alone on one side of the line, with the exception of the question mark.
It doesn't have polar bears
Alone. So the top row has polar bears and other animals. All the other ones have the polar bears by themselves, except the third one, which has a polar bear and a question mark.
Say if I wonder if they're not equivalences, are we looking at a data organization? Is the left separate from the right? We're looking at patterns. We're looking at stem and leaf. What else could it be?
I noticed that the zebras are in groups of 3.
So I'm wondering why the elephants have no color when all the other animals are colored in.
The seals are in groups of 2, and so are the kangaroos. Those are kangaroos.
I wonder about the kangaroos. Something just doesn't seem right with them. They seem out of place. Like, it's bothering me.
I noticed that there are fewer animals as you go down from top to bottom of the slide.
We wonder if it's possible to have half elephants or half kangaroos or thirds.
Like just chop them up, like just. So raise your hand if somebody noticed something you hadn't noticed. Oh, look at that. That's awesome, right? Would you like to know what the question is? I'm going to put it up, and then we're going to pass it out. We can actually start passing out whenever Melissa and Alexa. They've been trying since last night. They're like, can we put these on the tables? No. I'm delaying answer getting. So let's look at what the problem is. It says, and you can't read this, but you're getting them. And not only are you getting them, you're getting more than one. There are enough for each table for each of you to have like 3, okay? So you might start writing on it and change your mind and want a new one, just grab it. We have plenty. So it says, Ms. Nora wants her ark to sail along on an even keel. The ark is divided down the middle, which we noticed. And on each deck, the animals on the left exactly balance those on the right, all but the third deck. Can you figure out how many seals are needed in place of the question mark so that they and the bear will exactly balance the 6 zebras? Now, here's what we're going to do. You're going to have 5 minutes, as we talked about, to start to figure out how you're going to approach this. As I said, there are multiple wonderful approaches to this problem. During that 5 minutes, you're going to see me walking around, and I'm going to choose a few different strategies to share. Wait just 1 second. I know you want to get in this. After 5 minutes, I'm going to ask you to stop. You're going to groan. And we're going to look at a few different ways people thought to start, just to get some new ideas on the table for you. Because I will tell you with this problem, most people have to switch strategies partway through. Like you might have a strategy and it gets you pretty far along and then it taps out and you need a new idea. So we're going to get some ideas on the table. And then I'm going to say work together, work alone, however you want, following our norms of stating your needs. You might say, I'm not ready to talk yet, or, oh, I'm dying to talk. Do you want to talk? And then I'm going to let it go till people are satisfied. So think about what we said before. If you have solved it one way, there are many, many ways. So challenge yourselves, okay? So first 5 minutes of silence, and we'll see how you approach it. This is supposed to be fun, remember? Okay, I'm going to ask you to pause just for a sec. Sorry. I know you might still be in like, these kangaroos. What do I do with the kangaroos? And what I want to do, you saw me running around. If you haven't yet read the book, The 5 Practices for Orchestrating Productive Mathematical Discussions, I highly recommend it. And they talk about, like, I've done this problem a lot. I know what strategies might emerge, and I was looking for some ideas to get on the table. So I asked a few people if I could share their work, and I don't know where the mic is anymore. Emily has the mic. This is Trisha, correct? Yes, so this is Trisha's work. So what I did here, I did not want solutions. These are not solutions, these are first steps. Like how did she start? So can you explain what you did to start here?
So I took what I could see balanced out at the bottom. One bear was 3 zebras. So over on the right, I have 1b equals 3z. And then I knew one elephant was 2 bears. So 1e was 2b. And then I used that to figure out that one elephant would be 6 zebras. So once I knew that, I looked at the top row and I started to kind of cancel it out, kind of like an algebra.
So before you canceled, though, you wrote, like the elephant, before you crossed it out, you turned that elephant into 2 bears, right?
Yes.
So she said, in place of an elephant, I can put 2 bears, and I know that because in the bottom row, one elephant balanced 2 bears, right?
Yes.
So you started substituting, and then I see the zebras was 1 bear for each trio of zebras?
Yep.
Can you say why you picked bears to substitute in bears? Like to get everything in terms of bears. You didn't do it for kangaroos, you did it for bears. Was there a reason behind that, you think?
Probably just because at the bottom the bear was the common factor.
There are a lot of bears, right? Are there bears in every row?
Yeah.
And you have some clear relationships with the bears on the bottom. So she chose like, well, okay, I see I can work with this. Bear is 3 zebras and 2 bears is an elephant, or a bear is half an elephant, or however you want to think about that. And so she started getting rid of other animals and making them bears. So if you haven't tried that idea, that might come in handy for you down the road. Thank you, Trisha. Kylie is right here, right? In the red. So what was your approach here?
I think I just wanted to simplify the problem more so that I could be for sure that one animal was equal to so many. So like at the bottom, I knew that one elephant was equal to 2 polar bears. So I wanted to start crossing that out at the top so that I could, I guess, see different opportunities.
So if they balanced, you just threw them off the boat.
Right.
Right? Like they're not affecting things anymore. They balance each other out, over they go.
Right.
And then you can start to work with the animals you have left, which is like a simpler problem, you're saying? It made it simpler. Awesome, thank you. Nice manicure, by the way. I'm sorry I got your finger in the picture. Demetra is in the back left table. I'm sorry about the crooked. It went funny in my phone. This is a different approach. I saw somebody else was doing this with different numbers. So how did you start, Demetra?
First of all, my paper looked different now, so it's all scratched up. I made some changes,
perfect.
but I started at the bottom. Like everybody else said, they knew that 1 elephant equals 2 bears. So I broke it into fractions, and then once I got the key from the bottom, 1/2, I started trying to fill it in. I'm still figuring it out.
Awesome. So I would call this strategy assigning a numerical value. She said an elephant is 1. You didn't care. It's not like it's 1 pound or 1. It doesn't matter to you. Like an elephant, if an elephant is 1, a polar bear is 1/2. And from there, she can start working the relationships out. Now, you could have picked a different number than 1. I saw somebody had a 5. Somewhere in there, I saw 5 when I was walking around. I've seen 6, I've seen 12, I've seen all kinds of numbers chosen for what that would be. But if you end up with time and you want to try this strategy, it's a really interesting one to see what happens. And then I'm just going to share, I know Sonia's dying to talk. So Sonia's right here, the one saying, me, give me the microphone. I love to talk in a crowd.
Oh, okay. So
This is a safe space.
I also started at the bottom and I started equations. And then when Tracy came over, recognizing that one elephant equals two bears and that three zebras equals one bear. And when she came over to take the picture and said that it was going to be on the slide, my brain went absolutely empty.
Oh, no!
And I stopped at that point.
Okay, that's okay, because you have plenty of work time left. That's okay. What Sonia did that I wanted to highlight, so some people are working with the picture. She even went to a different piece of paper, and I'm going to put Catherine, yours up here too. She went to a different piece of paper and started writing what was going on symbolically. That was easier for her at that point in the problem to start writing these relationships out using symbols. And so that might come in handy. Like you might start with the crossing out or the making everything a bear thing, and at some point you're like, okay, that got me so far, and now I need a new idea. And so this might be an idea that you want to try. So now we have some new ideas on the table. You saw some different strategies. I want to give you some time to work on this problem together or alone. So you may say, I saw something I got to try. Can we talk in 3 minutes? Or you might just want to start talking now, but I'm going to stop being strict and you are going to flow, and just remember our norm of enjoy each other's discovery and support one another as we take risks and approach this problem. So let's get to work.
just think that the teachers are so engaging because we're not. Yeah. So this wall is coming down. What divided that wall? I was like, we got all that stuff on there. I was like, uh-oh, we're gonna move our. Oh, okay. I thought you. Oh, I thought you were. They were gonna pull. I did.
still be left with a bear and two seals equal to the kangaroo. Well, could we do this by substitution? You said, so this one bear could be one kangaroo plus two seals. I came up with that one here. If I get that. One kangaroo, two seals. You came up with that from here. You took half of this, half of this, and half of that.
That was a great because when elephant crossed out there, so yeah. Then what's hard, it still doesn't tell me what. So one pair, okay, maybe. So if I let that play out, right? If I'm saying that one bear, if I took this bear and put one kangaroo there and two seals. Yes, that's a good argument. That's what I'm saying. It has to go to short. See where I'm going? So I guess the question is, so I can only use seals here. I was going to use two seals. I got one there and it is, yeah, they're balanced out with two seals. Funny feeling that is.
So here's what I did. So I just reduced this down to the variables. Two bears plus two kangaroos. Oh crap. Never mind. It's wrong. I had the wrong coefficient.
But it's fun to be able to think out loud.
So you're right. What did you say?
Can I have your attention just for a sec? There are groups still really deep in this problem, and I am not going to stop until they're satisfied. If you have solved the problem, and I know you also need time just to talk, and that's great. So this is no judgment. You're adults. But just two thoughts. If you have solved the problem, one is to try it a different approach. And I want to say that Tina had an idea over here, which was to think of the whole boat as a left side and a right side. Instead of thinking row by row, you might want to play with that. Oh, you said people. So you could try a different way. There are so many different ways. I am continually intrigued by that. The other thing, and we'll just take like 5 more minutes of solving time, so you might do that. The other thing is I'm going to ask to make sure that you have time, and we don't have enough markers for everyone to have a marker anyway. So take turns at your table to grab a marker and go around to our verbs from this morning and circle some things you did while working on this problem. Go look at those verbs and like circle or star them if you did them. So I want you to use this time well. We'll take 5 more minutes of people working. Either try a new strategy, finish the strategy you're working on, or circle the verbs that you engaged in, okay? Okay, keep going. to do? Okay, I'm gonna have to make us come on back. I'm not going to say what the answer is right now because it's still an open question for some tables, and I do not want to steal their joy. Okay. But come find me if you're like want to talk about it as the day goes on. I might share. I'm of two minds about what to do right now. This is an instructional decision moment. We all face this, but I want to just take a sec before we do anything else and ask you how we did on our norms. And we don't have time for a full whole group debrief, but I'd like you to just take a minute at your table. I'll put them back up, and think about how did you do. Were you good group mates to each other? Were there things you would like to say of like there was shout somebody out, say this was really helpful to me when you asked me these questions. They got me unstuck, or thank you for giving me time. Or you might say it would have been helpful for me if, and you can give people feedback. So take a second, just look at these again, and then have just a 2-minute conversation at your table. How did you do on norms, and what do you still want to work on that? So talk for a sec about norms. Not about kangaroos, but about norms. Okay. I just want to compliment you on what I saw as I walked around like that table in the back. I said they were all talking. They were very confused, and then they looked at me and I said, "This is beautiful," and they were like, and I was like, "I'm not talking about the kangaroos. I'm talking about the way you're talking through the confusion. Like I don't care about the kangaroos right now. I care about how you're listening to and supporting one another." And they were saying that actually talking made them each realize they didn't understand what they were talking about, and then they had to go back and work on it some more. And now they're like still in that process. So there are these period. There's actually a recent study that shows that intermittent group work is the most effective, where you have time to work and then time to talk and time to work and time to talk. You get a variety of strategies, but also that cross-pollination of ideas. That's very helpful. But I saw a lot of support as I walked around. If there are any burning issues that came up, I would love to talk about them, like the pen cap thing. Those are my favorite things that ever happened. Tell me in the bathroom if it, or guys find me outside in the hallway. My bigger question right now is which verbs did you engage in? Not too many people took me up on that invitation. I do think it's really helpful for you before you leave today to take some time and go look at these and say, yeah, I did that. I was wondering. I was struggling. I was figuring stuff out. I was trying a new way. Whatever the things are that you see up there. I was asking questions and say like that. So that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like to work on a worthy math problem for a little bit. Briefly, I made some choices, right, to try to make it increase the likelihood you would engage in those verbs. And can we just name those real quick so that that's explicit? Like, what's something I did so that everyone might had the opportunity to engage in the verbs? Oh, I forgot about the microphone thing. And I'm not saying I did it perfect, but I was trying to increase the opportunities. So, like, what in the facilitation moves did I do when I rolled out this problem, when I launched it, and while you were working?
Allowed us the time we needed.
Time. Lots of time, right?
You didn't give us the question right away.
She rolled her eyes at you, Alexa.
I looked for someone closer.
I want you to work. You told us there was like at least half a dozen different ways. So if someone started differently next to you, you didn't have to freak out that you were doing it wrong.
Oh, yeah.
I like that you showed the students' works of a way for that first step, because maybe I didn't know where to start at all, and then you gave me an idea that I thought, oh, I didn't even think of doing it like that. Or maybe I'd finished the problem one way, and I didn't know how to start it again because my mind was so fixated on the way that I had done it. Then I was like, yeah, I could do that, and I think I could even change that and come up with something different.
Mm-hmm. I think when you go straight back to it, you establish the norms. So we already knew to start with what the expectations are with each other. So that really helped me.
I also say the same thing. You establish the expectations of engagement.
You started us with the notice and the wonder so that we didn't have to like go at it blank.
Yes.
So it's like you shared the ideas of, oh, you could look at this, or you could look at this, or you could look at this.
And if someone had noticed that some of the animals were facing left and some of the animals were facing right, I would have written that down. And if someone had noticed that some of the animals had 4 legs and some had 2 legs, I would have written that down. Like, and anything that is, or that the kangaroo's sketchy, like that, we got that up here, right? It is sketchy. And so we got that up here as well. And so it's everyone, one of the main things I do when I facilitate a problem is try to increase access. I'm taking down all the barriers to access. So the Notice and Wonder did 2 things. It allowed me to get rid of the text load, right? So now reading is no longer a barrier to entering this problem. And it also, everybody in here can notice and wonder something about that picture. So everyone has now started the problem. And that is a huge priority. So Notice and Wonder is a great strategy for that. You just take the text away, or you take the question away, you put up the provocation, you say, what do you notice, what do you wonder? One more, and then I'm so late that they're going to get the hook for me. You want to just yell it out? No, I did not validate your answers. And still walking around, I'm seeing 2 seals, 4 seals, 6 seals, 9 seals. I'm seeing multiple answers still at this point. There is a fixed answer to this problem. There is a correct answer, but I'm not going to say it. And somebody was like, can you just like wink at us? Like, can you just give a little nod? And I was like, no, I'm not. I've been working on this poker face for a long time, and it's not, the poker face is not that I don't look interested. I look interested and curious in your ideas, but I'm not going to reveal the answer through a wink and a nudge, which takes some training on our faces, because we want to be like, oh yeah, that's interesting. Like the kids look to us for the cues, and I want to know from you, like, well, are you sure? How do you know? Can you prove it to each other? Like, what? Because the authority for determining what's true in mathematics does not reside in the teacher, and it does not reside in the textbook. It resides in the mathematics and the mathematician. So the kids should be able to prove it without checking with the teacher. Jen Mohammed's a teacher I wrote about a lot. She's amazing. And one of my all-time favorite moments was a kid was talking, explaining his strategy. He had his whiteboard, and he got partway through, and he said, wait a minute, is that true? And he didn't look at her. He looked down at his work. And he was quiet for a minute, and he said, yeah, that's true. And I thought, that's what I want. That's that idea of empowering. It's not just that we're propping the kids up. Like, they feel that authority in themselves. Our kids are entering a very unjust world, right? And I want them to be able to advocate for what's right and what's true based on evidence, not just to, I don't want to teach obedience in math class. I want to teach that agency. So that's really important to me. So I left you guys with like 8 minutes to talk about the circles. But my hope is that in this work over the circles this year and ongoing is how can you, what shifts, and you can't change everything in a year. Steve Leinwan says it's unreasonable to change more than 10% in a year of your practice. He also says it's unreasonable to expect that you change less than 10%. Like, that's a reasonable goal, right? So like, what shifts can you make over the course of this year so that your kids are engaged in more authentic math? I gave you a lot of ideas in the book, and then in other work you will bring in. There are a lot of other great books out there and things, resources for you. But I want to stay in touch with you, so we'll talk about how we'll use those Zoom sessions. But I just wanted to highlight, that's my personal email on the bottom. You reach out to me anytime. Find me on Twitter. This math teacher Twitter is the nicest Twitter in the world. We don't yell about the press there. We talk about like beautiful math things. And then that's my website and blog, which has a lot of supplemental resources related to the book that are free. You don't have to buy the book to get to that stuff at all. And I'm going to stop talking so that they can talk. Thank you so much for the morning. It's been really fun. Math
Thank
rocks,
you, Tracy. Learn